Ready graphics? Ready theme? Cue it.
Good evening. For your information tonight.
Hi, I'm Jesse Mullins.
And I'm Lauren Milberger.
And this is FYI,
the Murphy Brown Podcast.
Brown arrives in her lilac shepherdess glory.
Some guy!
This episode is chaos.
They sort of flipped the gender norms.
It is prime elevator day.
And on today's episode,
we'll be talking about Season 2, Episode 26, Going to the Chapel, Part 2.
Hello!
Hello, everyone. What a lovely day to close up a season.
We made it!
We did it!
Looks like we made it.
27 episodes.
Holy
What a number.
I hope that people understand that, like, 27 episodes of a sitcom for 1990 was not a usual thing.
No, it wasn't like back when, remember they all had 22 episodes, even if it wasn't an hour-long show. Like, no, this is a lot even for when people had more episodes.
Yeah, like maybe a couple did like 24, but like 22 is kind of like the sweet spot.
Uh-huh.
Maybe 25, right?
Yeah.
Because technically the hour episodes count as 2 episodes in the contract. Mm-hmm. But 27.
And now, like, this is obviously 2 parts. So we could say this is part 2 of episode 26, but it is technically, as you said, episode 27.
Yeah. I mean, and also even the episode that, like an hour episode that airs as an hour is technically considered 2 episodes because a series is contracted for the number of half hours. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it's a half-hour sitcom. Yeah, so this aired May 21st, 1990, and is once again written by Diane and Corky, and starts with the Entertainment Tonight theme song.
Wow. What, like, it just, I was transported.
This show meant so much to me at this time.
I was obsessed.
Obsessed. I think that some people may not either remember or do remember or don't know that, like, it was a entertainment, like, wasteland. There was no E yet. Mm-hmm. You had to wait until 7:30 or whenever, the syndicated decided to show it. It was usually 7:30.
6:30 Central.
Oh, sorry, Central. I forgot about Central.
But literally, as you said that, I was like, before you said the time, I was like, it was always at 6:30. Like, I knew exactly what time.
With Mary Hart and John Tesh. And it was, it was my favorite thing.
Well, and this is Lisa Gibbons, which is like, but Mary Hart. Mary Hart was the literal heart of the show.
Oh, look where you went.
Oh, look where we went.
I was trying to remember, and I'm pretty sure that Lisa Gibbons was like fill-in for Mary Hart and weekend host, mm-hmm. I believe. Mm-hmm. I may be remembering this wrong. But I was interested to check that the show started in 1981.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
This is the only time where they used sort of a creative way to do a previously on, which I thought was really great.
I literally wrote the PR tour, what a way to do a previously on without doing a previously on.
It was so good.
Mm-hmm. I love that they fit it in like E.T. has the footage from the things that we saw.
Yes, right? I know.
It's so clever because it's a wink to the audience. Like, we all know that obviously E.T. doesn't have the footage from these moments, but it's such a clever way to be like, previously on Murphy Brown. Like, it's so clever. It really tickled me.
Oh, I realize that we're kind of going right into it, but I want to get into the habit of reminding people at the beginning, at the top of our episodes, that you can watch this episode and follow along with us now. Mm-hmm. We have a link on the main page of our website, which is murphybrownpod.com, so check that out. Obviously, we're going to still do the episodes as if you haven't just seen it, but we definitely encourage you to watch the episode and then follow along with us.
In fact, stop everything. Go click that link. We will wait.
We'll wait.
It's called the pause button.
Welcome back.
Oh my gosh, look, you're back.
Oh, thank you for coming back. Oh, we're so
that's
glad
so nice. Okay, so now that we're caught up.
Yeah. So I guess we're going into the episode.
Let's do it.
Here's one thing I wanted to ask you. Do you think that when Corky is saying, "Oh, he's just the man of my dreams," does she come across as not seeming genuine when she says that? Or is that just me because I know what happened?
I think it's a little of both. I think Faith is playing the confusion that she's in. What I'm reading from that is that Corky is excited to be in the middle of this, excited about this interview and like everything she's always dreamed of. But I also think that confusion is currently playing in the back of her mind. So I think that the insincerity is not necessarily that she's lying, but that she is. These are obviously interviews from before she ran off with Eldon.
Yes, no, and the thing is that I like that. I like that's how Faith is playing it. I just wanted to be sure if I was reading it that way.
Well, it also reminds me of when I watch like reality television dating shows. That one of the things that, because my husband always ends up watching it with me because he can't help himself. And when he's like, why do you think XYZ? I'm like, look, at the lead or whoever's talking at the moment can't say specifics about why they care about this person. It's not going to work. Anytime that either the person is talking about what the other person does for them or can't name something specific that they love about the other person that is about that person, that's a red flag. And I think that's something that's happening in these interviews with Corky that we see, is that she can't say a specific. She's just supposed to be happy. So she is.
Yes, which I think plays into what this episode is saying, right? Like on paper, this should be Corky's dream. But Corky has now grown up. And so this is no longer her dream.
It makes me feel like how I think a lot of us little baby actors would practice our acceptance speeches in walking around our home or in a mirror. I feel like Corky practiced all the things she would say when she's in love with the man she's meant to be. And so she's living this like fantasy that she's been living her entire life. But as a child, you don't know what those things are. And so she's doing the thing that she's practiced, she's always going to do when she's happy and in love and everything's going right. Unfortunately, as an adult, she can't fill the space.
Oh, what a great way to say it. I love that. I also find it funny that when Lisa Gibbons is like, we have been following the romance between Corky Sherwood and her childhood friend.
All 2 weeks of it.
All 2 weeks of it, because
they're fast.
That's obviously what we care about.
Yes. It's that nice reminder for us sometimes where their status in pop culture in the Murphy Brown world. Corky Sherwood is supposed to be this level of pop culture.
Yes.
And so that's a wonderful reminder of like, oh, this whirlwind of 2 weeks, like everybody's watching it.
She's marrying some guy.
Some
non-famous
America's
guy.
princess.
And what's also great is that this also leads into the actual episode as they take a break and the phone rings and it's Frank. And then John Tesh goes, Tesh here. You don't understand, like, John Tesh was like such a stud back then. I mean, he wasn't my type, but like, what is he, like 6'4", chiseled looks?
How old were you for him to be your type?
I'm sorry, you know what I mean. But you can.
Well, he wasn't my type.
I mean,
like, I hope not. You were a child. This episode is chaos already.
But I have to say, do you ever do something like, I used to be obsessed with Pirates of Penzance, and it's how I started loving Kevin Kline. And then watching...
Excuse me, why have we never talked about the fact that I own both versions, the stage and the film? And I am obviously Angela Lansbury, but like,
well, of course,
my best friend and I, to this day, that is our special thing, is Pirates of Penzance.
But like going back as an adult and watching the, you know, the cat scene, what's the song called? I haven't seen it in forever, but you know, when
with Cat Like Tread,
when they're bouncing up and down in the hot pants, and I went, oh
no, literally, Kevin Kline's Gumby limbs, what he does with his legs and knees, like I watch it and my knees hurt. He's incredible. When during the paradox, when he just like squats and then crosses his own leg over his already squatted leg. The man is Gumby. It's crazy.
But like I watched this in kindergarten. And like I'm the kind of person that like probably didn't really hit puberty until like college. You know what I mean? Like I recently discovered that I'm demisexual, like I'm on the asexual scale.
Hell
so
yeah.
like but so it cracks me up that like I'm not it's not really my thing, but I was in kindergarten and I looked back and I went, oh yeah, I've always been heterosexual. Okay. All right. Wow.
Yeah, I had the opposite in adulthood, looking back and being like, oh, always bisexual. Oh, right. The concept of quote unquote girl crush was really a really terrible thing to teach children. We should have just said, you have a crush? Great.
Sexuality is a spectrum.
Imagine.
Whatever you enjoy.
But yeah, no, those boys, those are strapping gents in Pirates of Penzance.
Yes, they are. Tesh here. Anyway, so before I realized that they had been on a date, I wrote down Frank is this close to a Me Too lawsuit.
Every day. Every day.
Every day, Frank. But then when I realized they had actually been on a date, I was like, okay, he's following up. Not in a good way, but he's just following up on the date. He's not harassing her that much.
He's not a creep. He's just not good at it.
He's not good at it. But you know what I realized in this scene, and I think we've sort of touched on this before, is I think that Frank is trying to masquerade in this sort of form of toxic masculinity that he thinks that women want. But he is actually a little gooey little puffball. And if he just showed people how sensitive he is and who he really is, he would be happy and get a woman, which is interesting in contrast to Murphy, who supposedly has these stereotypical non-feminine, I'm using air quotes, what's wrong with me, so-called, non-feminine traits and is being who she is. But the world is like, oh no, that's a male trait that you're doing, right? And so I was like, that's really interesting, right? Like they sort of flipped the gender norms, so to speak.
Yeah. I think that's one of my favorite things about their relationship. I will say two things. One, I support you on this Skype call that we are on using your air quotes.
Thank you.
Because let's remember, when you smile while recording, we can hear you smile. I could hear your air quotes because you were using them. They were in your voice. I elevate. But the other thing I want to say is that the thing I find interesting about Frank as he like cosplays John Tesh is that he often brings his sensitivity and vulnerability, like we see later, in as like a last resort or a final tactic.
Oh, interesting.
And if he could just swing that to the forefront, I think it would work much better.
And we see things like later where, in flashbacks that like his mother buys him a leather jacket. He's like, it's not a cool leather jacket. It doesn't have, straps and this, I really think that he thinks he's being, air quotes, a man by doing this stuff.
Well, the problem is that the women he's actually interested in are not the women who will be impressed by that.
Exactly.
Frank is an equal opportunity employer, but the type of woman he actually truly gets swooned over are the ones that don't want that type of guy.
My favorite partnership that I've seen Frank have is in a flashback when he meets this like kind of really cool, chill woman in a voting booth. Like, it's only one episode and it's one scene and it's a flashback. And I was like, oh, I wish he would meet her again. And maybe it's just the actors had really good chemistry, but like, I was like, oh, this is like the perfect person for Frank. But anyway.
Honestly, Frank needs a Doris.
Don't we all need a Doris?
We all need a Doris.
So Frank is not doing so well getting a date for the wedding. And neither is Miles. He's talking to someone named Terry, which is funny to me because the last, I think, actress who played his love interest was Terry Hatcher, but it might just be a coincidence. And she can't go to the wedding because she has to flea dip her cat. She can't go to the event of the season that was planned in a week.
Yeah, having never flea dipped a cat, nor know if that's still a thing that is done, I cannot speak on because hey, pet procedures could take a lot of time. I do get the impression that is a ridiculous statement.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely what's happening. So I'm like, what did Miles do? That like even someone was like, oh yeah, sure. Why don't I just go to like this huge celebrity event? Maybe I'll have fun. She must like really, really, really hate it. But again, we've seen Miles also sort of pump up his so-called masculinity to look away. That's not him either. So who knows how he acted on this date?
I fully believe that when we don't see him on dates, that Miles is everyone's Audrey.
That's why they're so perfect together.
Do you get this impression that I feel like if he goes on a date and the woman's like, let's just pretend whatever, he's like, absolutely, and takes it way too far.
So then, of course, Frank and Miles lie to each other, that they're fighting him off with a stick. And I wrote, these poor men.
These poor men.
And then Murphy enters with Jim. And now, I know that we're both very good at colors, but I feel like you were like, a lot of time, much better with me about this. So I literally wrote, ask Jesse this. Is this a chartreuse that Murphy is wearing?
Chartreuse.
Yes?
I wrote chartreuse.
Okay, because I know that you've mentioned chartreuse before, and it's a color that I always confuse, and so I was like, this is the Jessie color. I need to ask Jessie. But I Googled it, and I also found another color called honeysuckle yellow.
Sure, absolutely.
Which is also
it's
very
a yellow
cool.
with a little bit of green in it.
Yeah.
I laugh so hard that you say it's a Jessie color. I understand why you say
Yeah.
that, but like I could.
No, I would never wear it either.
color.
I meant that it was
how
a knowledge
dare
Jessie
Candace Bergen
question.
look that good.
Again, like I got.
Oh no, I totally know. That's why I'm laughing, because I'm like, I know what you meant by that, but it like I wish it was truly my color, because what a color,
Right?
What a standout, unique color.
And as a blonde, just it's fantastic. And then the necklace has like some browns in it, and it's just perfect Murphy Brown outfit. She's talking to Jim. She's worried about Corky. She feels that Corky's gone crazy. Murphy stopped by Corky's house this morning. She wasn't even there, and so she's worried about her. The gang wants to know what's going on, and Jim informs them that Corky ran off with the beatnik painter who hangs around at her house all the time.
Specifically, the beatnik painter man.
That's right, and I wrote that too. She ran off with the beatnik painter man. Listen, this episode has some really great Jim facial expressions.
Oh, they're so good.
And I don't know if it's just that like he's sort of easing into the character more, but like there's that great moment where Miles goes, "Eldon, you're kidding!" And then the look on Jim's face of like, "Keep your voices down," of like, look, like it's so perfect. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And Murphy says that, she doesn't know what happened. Murphy seemed great at the shower. Everything was fine. After the poker game, the male stripper showed up dressed like a fireman and did the dance of the 7 hoses. And then turns to Jim and goes, "You should have seen Doris. She was his ladder girl." And then again, the look on Charles's face of just like, I don't understand. What? Like,
oh, Doris, queen forever.
seriously, like what a woman.
Oh, she's incredible.
What a damn woman. Frank says, "Don't panic. So she disappeared with Eldon. It's probably not as bad as it sounds." And he goes, "Oh, man." And then ding, the elevator opens and the entire Sherwood family shows up. They're there for a tour. To which the gang, are we going to try this?
Yeah.
To which the gang says,
Murphy,
"Frank,
Jim,
Miles,
Murphy."
ding." And then the elevator opens again and it's Corky and Eldon. What I appreciate is that Corky is very wrinkled.
So rumpled.
So rumpled. And
It's
I
so
appreciate the accuracy of that.
This is what I love about good designers and like HMU in costume. It is very clear from the way she's rumpled that she was not rolling in the hay. The rumpling would be very different.
She was sitting. Yes. It's
you
very
could
much
tell-
a sitting rumpled.
Her hair is mussed, but it's not mussed in the way that it would be. It hasn't been like reclipped after something. Like it is so clear that she's just been out all night. But I love that she's still not perfect. It's such brilliant styling.
Yeah. And Faith is so good in this episode.
Oh, so good.
Mommy, Daddy, Kiki, Cookie. Eldon is so excited to meet the fam.
Oh, buddy.
Just swoops in, introduces himself, to which Murphy then quickly swoops in to be like, "This is Eldon, the anonymous source. It's better if you don't look directly at him," which is hilarious because then the entire like Sherwood clan looks in like different directions.
Oh my God, that group, like special,
so good.
special mention for the Sherwood family. They are such a unit. I want to have been like on the wall while they were all working together, because they like this little group is here for this episode as a group, and they are so good together. It's on like the tiny ensemble that they pull off is brilliant. Kudos to all of them.
We forgot to mention that Barnett, of course, directed the episode again, and I feel like it's a testament to him. And I think it's the kind of things that a lot of people take for granted with a director, that it seems like it's invisible. But, we're not there and I can't guess. But I just can imagine that a lot of this cohesiveness, just because they don't have a lot amount of time to
clearly
get to
took
know
the
each
time.
other. Yeah, that a lot of that had to do with his direction and how well he knows comedy for them to be a unit.
Well, for that type of quick turnaround, it is a testament to the director and the set, and then the actors being able to show up and take the note and do the thing and communicate with each other. Because a lot of that, like that ability to listen to each other and to go off of each other, that can't be directed. That has to be just, they need to hear what the director wants. He needs to be clear about what he wants, and then they need to trust each other and do it. And kudos.
Collaboration, ensemble. Yeah. So Corky tells her family that they should go meet her in her office while she, talks with her coworkers. And then the sweetest, funniest little moment is Corky's parents are holding hands and they stop by the coffee island. And her mother's like, they sure give her a great deal of responsibility. And her father goes, she must be smarter than we thought.
Oh. I love that we now know exactly where Corky's office is. That's down the hall, first door on the left. That's a really nice little piece. Because I'm always trying to imagine that area.
And I have to say that I feel like, and it's so hard to remember over time, but I feel like they're very consistent that is the way to Corky's office and that is the way to Frank's office.
Frank's office. Mm-hmm.
Jim's office is over close by the elevators. You'd come in through there, I think. And I think that's such important stuff to do. It just makes it feel real and grounded.
Do you mind if I take this moment to comment on the quotes that we have from Faith about Corky?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, specifically that whole she must be smarter than we think she is moment. Lauren found, and I'm so glad she did, from the LA Times, Faith talking about Corky not being a ditz.
Yeah, read those. Those are great.
And she says, quote, some people have described her as a ditz, but I don't think she's that, said Ford, who played the blonde beauty queen turned television news magazine reporter. Quote, she's an unedited person. She says what comes to her mind. She's bossy. She loves to throw her opinions at people. She offers advice that no one wants, but she's not dumb. One thing is that she has no sense of humor about herself. She takes everything so seriously. That is such a more respectful and graceful way of, this is that thing about you have to love your character when you play them.
Exactly, yeah.
This is a non-judgment of her, and if other people want to assign something like quote-unquote ditz to it, that says more about them than Corky herself, because this is something, we've talked about since we started the podcast that I love about her is that she is so much more than just the cliche that you might assume. And that all has to do with the fact that Faith didn't just play her as ditzy. She gave her all of these things. She gave her a bossiness. She gave her opinions, and maybe they're wrong. And the forcefulness with which she delivers them makes people think she's too stupid to realize that she's wrong. But that's actually not how Faith is playing her. And that's what I love about it. She just, she goes with the information she has. And the second she gets new information, she reassesses.
Yeah, and I love that she said that it's just that she doesn't have a sense of humor about herself and she doesn't have an edit button. And I hadn't thought about the sense of humor thing as she takes everything so seriously, which is such an earnest young thing to do.
Yes.
But it also made me think that one of the reasons I'm sure that Corky doesn't have an edit button is because she's been in an environment in which she is probably the smartest. She was the most popular. People didn't question her in her little world. So when she, says those things to Murphy, she really thinks that she's giving her really good advice because she's given that advice to other people and they didn't question it.
Well, and also, I think in many ways, she's the only person brave enough to offer something different to Murphy most of the time. She's like, well, no one else is going to say it, so I should probably say it.
Yeah,
she's
it's a kindness.
It's kindness, and it's a bravery to her. It also makes me think about the idea of being unedited. I think about when people talk about how to appear stronger in a corporate setting. This idea that you're supposed to sit there and hold back commentary until you, like, that idea of holding power by not speaking, holding power by listening rather than commenting, by being an edited person, you give the illusion of power and intelligence. And that's not always true. When you are unedited, you lay everything on the table. And so it's easier for people to judge your stance and where you come from.
Yeah. It makes her more vulnerable.
And I love her for that.
I know. But also going back to the whole, you can't play a character as being stupid, right? You have to love the character that you're playing. I know I've mentioned before, and people who may follow me online know that I've written a lot about Gracie Allen, who was sort of, looked at as sort of this dumb character. And in fact, it comes from a vaudeville trope called the dumb Dora. But George Burns was like, this isn't a logical logic to you. There's logic behind it. If you really think about it, what she's saying makes sense. She's just on her own thought process in her own plane. It doesn't make her dumb. She's just thinking about things in a different way.
And often she's thinking about them out loud.
Gracie Allen played it extremely seriously. I would even refer to Gracie Allen as the first method actor because she was like, well, if it's not real, how can I do this? So I love to hear that from Faith because she's playing it in the right way. She's coming from a sense of truth. And if you just played a character as dumb, there would be no depth there.
I think the same thing happens with Faith's friend Jane Leaves when she plays Audrey.
Yeah.
Audrey fully like just breathes in truth into everything she does, no matter how ridiculous it is. So when Audrey turns and looks at Miles, you just know something batshit is about to come out of her lips, but she believes it.
And I forget if we
truly.
mentioned this at the beginning because I was reminded of it watching this video of Primetime Live with the cast in 1990, is that Faith was concerned about taking the role because she didn't want to play another ditzy blonde. And Diane was like, no, like she's going to grow. She's going to be a realized person. So yeah, and this episode is part of her growth.
I love her so much.
I know.
So we enter into Murphy's office. The entire gang, what I love is they kind of shuffle in behind Corky like a little clown car.
Yes.
I believe we both already confabbed about this, but neither of us can read the dartboard.
Nope.
And I can see there's something on it,
Yep.
and I know it's good.
Yeah.
So
it's probably great.
someone please email us. And Murphy swings around behind her desk. She does not sit. And says, 2 chairs, sit in them, sit and then speak. And the chairs are Eldon and Corky. Then Miles, Frank, and Jim just line up standing behind them in like at the angle.
It's like they're in the principal's office.
Truly. And Murphy is just in an interrogation position standing behind her desk. And she asks, what is going on here? They both barely get out the word nothing before Miles and Frank just swarm in calling BS. And Jim, ever the consummate leader, says, hey now. He stands behind them, puts his hands almost on their shoulders, says they should have a chance to explain without us acting like the Spanish Inquisition. And what I love is Charlie does this thing where he slowly and deliberately walks around to stand next to Murphy behind the desk in this like position of authority.
Like mom
says,
and dad.
Go ahead. Yeah, he's like, hey, we have you. You're going to be okay. And tells him to go ahead. And Eldon calmly begins to say, nothing happened. They just talked. And Jim bursts out, all caps, liar, liar, pants on fire. Go away, you awful man. You soiled her and I don't want you here anymore. It's so good.
Soiled her.
It's because you know, Jim, we know what's going to happen. He seems so calm. We know he's going to lose his mind.
Yeah.
And it's so satisfying. Liar, liar, pants on fire. And Corky says, hey, they have nothing to hide. Eldon behaved like a perfect gentleman. Eldon says that he saw that she was in a weak and vulnerable position and that it would be wrong to take advantage of her. Although the thought did cross my mind on 23 separate occasions.
Oh, I love that.
It's so
honest
just,
that he was a
he's-
gentleman. That's what a gentleman does.
courage is not the absence of fear. It's a being there and acting anyway. Like
Yes.
being a gentleman is not the absence of flaw. It's choosing not to act on the flaw.
Yes. Being a good guy.
I love him. And what I love, this little tidbit kills me. He took her to a house painter hangout.
Which we will meet,
Where they-
which we will find in season 3.
Yes.
We'll go to the house painter hangout.
Yes. But I love the idea that they just sit there to talk about art and the world. It's just like what this like. I just love the subculture of Eldon's house painter world.
Yes, no,
and I
it's
love that we
great.
get to see it later because you're just like, what is this place? Like she talks about it and the way Eldon is, without spoiling what it eventually looks like, what comes to my mind without that information
Yeah,
that
go
we
for
know
it.
comes later, you just get this idea of this like Cold War Russian basement with velvets and dark reds, and there's probably like a little bit of smoke, maybe a beret. Like it just sounds like this like counterculture
Well, there's
movement.
definitely a beret.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And however, she says that she sat there with them and she saw that her life and career were too important to give up. Murphy asks what she's saying, and she says the wedding is off. Everyone, just like last episode, everyone plays this incredibly seriously.
Yeah.
Very simply. It's beautiful. We go from the liar, liar, pants on fire down to this really simple moment. And then Will arrives. And he opens the door with, hi, and everyone snaps. With, hi! He asks if he's interrupting and jumps back with a little bit of fear. And Murphy says, oh, not at all. They were just sitting around chatting. And this moment, Barnett, well crafted. She says they were sitting around chatting, but we're done now. And in that moment, she does this dip into her chair as if, she's just been sitting, time to get up. And all of the boys behind her do these like awkward squat curtsies as if on the various like furniture and walls available to them in the same moment. And they just flee the office.
Oh, God.
I went back about 3 times to rewatch each one of them because I'd seen her dip and I laughed because she was like, I was just sitting, time to go. But then you look in the back and Jim, Frank, and Miles are just these weird little crumpled men. trying to like sit on the cabinet, the plant. Like, it is hilarious.
They're so good when they don't talk, I have to say. Well, and when they talk,
know.
but yeah.
For a show that's so kind of
Verbal.
erudite
Yeah.
and brilliant and clever, the physical comedy is so good. We are left in the office with Corky and Will. Will approaches Corky and asks and says he wants to know what is wrong. He called her all night and all morning. Is something wrong? And Corky says, well, she's been doing a lot of thinking, and she always gets in a lot of trouble when she does that, so she really tries not to. Which, the self-awareness, my princess. And she says, but she's been thinking that walking down the aisle will be the end of everything. And she says she knows he's a traditional man, and she thought she was an old-fashioned girl, but she loves her career. She doesn't want to settle down when she could be going on assignment to Paris. She says, I've never been to Paris, Will. I've never been a lot of places, and I think I really have to go. Does he understand? I love that line, and I think I really have to go.
Yeah.
And he surprises her by saying that yes, he does understand. Oh boy, am I relieved. And he says he didn't know how to tell her, but he's been having his own doubts. We now, as elder millennials, Gen Z, are all far more used to people saying what he's about to say. But for his age, for this time
Yeah, I was
period,
thinking
for a
that
man
too.
to say this
Yeah, big deal.
is so bold. And he says that he's afraid he's going to turn around and realize he's become his dad. Working in a job I hate to pay off a mortgage on a house I don't like in a place I'm tired of. I don't want that to happen to me, Corky. And like, this whole conversation, it makes me sad knowing what happens.
Yeah, right?
This conversation is exactly kind of what I want for Corky. Like, they actually have a real conversation about gender roles, about wanting a career, wanting to change what's been laid out for you, doing it together because you both understand, because they both clearly still want partnership. It brings me back to what you said last episode about wondering if they knew where they were going with this relationship in the next season when they wrote this.
Yeah, I wonder, because what ends up, I go back and forth between that, right? Because, and I'm not as familiar with the later seasons as I am with the first 4 or 5, for many reasons, including the fact that I was in college. But
yeah,
so I'm sure people will know this better than I do. But I feel like also a lot of Will's problem is that he was frustrated that he wasn't as successful as Corky. Even though he got a movie made out of his terrible book, you mostly see him frustrated with not being able to be creative.
And I think that's a really brilliant examination of wanting to break down the patriarchy and misogyny that has been built within your life and wanting to change these structures, but a lot of it still being within you in these complicit assumptions and gender expectations that you didn't realize were important to you. That place of being like, oh, my wife is more successful than me and that makes me feel gross. That is still left over from that very thing that he wanted to buck. But that doesn't mean that wanting to get rid of that life gets rid of it. Like, you really have to do a lot of work at it, and not a lot of it is just hardwired into your brain.
I also feel a lot of Corky's growth has to do with the fact that these fantasies that she grew up with become real and difficult.
Yep. They are no longer fantasies when you're living them.
Like this, all of a sudden, I don't have the quote in front of me because I didn't think to talk about it, but Emma Thompson recently got some flack because she came out and said that romantic love doesn't exist. But what she means is that there's no technical happy ever after at the end of a romantic comedy, that relationships and marriage are hard. That's what she meant. She meant that, she's fought every day for her relationship, any relationship.
That's the beginning. It's not the end.
Exactly. And so I'm just thinking about this in the moment from what you're saying, is I think that maybe this all did have to happen because every sort of, fantasy idea that Corky grew up on gets shattered because of reality, because it's tough. Relationships are tough. Being a career person is tough. And having to forge new dreams, which is what many adults have to do when you realize that you can't get everything that you want necessarily, or that obstacles are going to get in your way and you need to figure out ways to work past them and still be happy.
And also back to, part 1 of this story, which is that she is not who she thought she'd grow up to be. And so therefore those dreams don't align anymore. The life that she has lived, her life experiences, this job, the people she's around, they have forever changed her. And so therefore those fantasies that she had will be disappointing because they're not this Corky's fantasies. And that's really hard to reconcile.
Yeah, and when we get to the revival, if you think about it, and I guess even technically at the end of the series, the original series, not only is Corky's life sort of more resembling Murphy's, but Murphy's the one with the child. And Corky doesn't seem to have any regrets in that area. She doesn't have children, and she loves her career, and she's happy, and that is a choice.
One of my favorite random things to do is to find videos of people predicting if rom-com couples actually made it after the story.
Oh, yes.
And it's so fun to be like, no, they have terrible communication.
Yes, that's not going to work out at all.
Something that this makes me think of is on a lot of long-running shows, I'm thinking of West Wing, Gilmore Girls, these types of shows where much beloved characters meet a partner too early in the storytelling for it is too early to give Corky her perfect match. Like it doesn't matter how much I want her to kind of have this conversation later with somebody else. We're having it now. And the TV watcher, the seasoned TV watcher in me who knows how many seasons there are and also is like, oh, it's only the second season, is like, oh no, this is going to take a turn because it's just too early to give. Corky has so much to grow, that Corky has so much to happen in the story, that like this feels like something that I think we just know as we're watching that Corky is a future Murphy kind of fit. Like we've been watching this since Devil in a Blue Dress. Like we all know amidst all the other red flags of just like, oh no, this is probably not going to happen, that it's just from a writing standpoint, it is too early in the show for this to be Corky's ending, romantic ending.
Yeah, and conflict is story, so.
Yep. So we know it, but it does make me a little sad. So her response to him is that she had no idea he felt this way. And he says he wants them to take chances, travel, do everything in life they've always wanted to do, and he wants to do it together. And she hugs him in glee, and then he pulls her back and says, and I want to quit my job.
What?
And Faith is the queen of the tiny physical record scratch.
Yeah, what?
What? And he said he's always wanted to write the great American novel. And where does it say that the man has to earn the money? He'll stay home and write and take care of the house while she supports them. Which again, love this modern take.
It.
And she says, gee, what an interesting idea. Which again, that thing of like, oh, maybe we do have some gender norms that we're not necessarily okay with getting rid of. And she says, let me get this straight. She would go to work every day and he would stay home and try to write a book. And then she leans in and very conspiratorially says, would you also be doing grocery shopping and small errands like going to the dry cleaners?
Because then it's
And
a yes.
he says, that's up to them. They're free thinkers, rule breakers. But most importantly, they can make this work. And then I'm so glad she went back to this. I forgot last episode that she does actually go back to this, which is she says, what about Paris?
Yeah.
She turned it down and she doesn't want to feel guilty about going to things like that. And he says, don't worry about him. Prove it by going to Paris. And he says, a few thousand miles isn't going to change the way that I feel about you. And she says, oh, Will. And honestly, in my heart, I was like, oh, Will. And then they smooch. And then I'm like, oh, this makes me sad. And we cut to just outside Murphy's door, where Murphy has been leaning up to the door and listening the entire time. Mm-hmm. And the others are standing around waiting for intel. And she springs back as they open the door. And Will and Corky step out somberly. They have something to tell everyone. We're getting married! And everyone is flummoxed. One of them goes like, what is going on? Everyone is flummoxed. And Corky announces that Will is going to quit his job and I'm going to support us. Will's going to make the beds and I'm going to Paris. And Eldon turns away dramatically. Everyone notices.
I wrote it the exact same way.
It's like, oh. And Corky walks over to him and says, Eldon, this is what she wants, and she hopes he can be happy for her. And Bobby does, with just the wobbliest voice. Do you want to do this, Lauren?
I do. I hope you have a happy life, and I will use this pain to inspire my greatest work. Man dies on honeymoon. Ding!
And He's just wobbling the entire time. He's like, let me be the first to congratulate you. He hopes her happy life is filled with all of the things that you deserve. Don't worry about me.
The use of
Don't worry about me.
The use of the elevator ding as a button to so many jokes in this episode is just mwah.
It is prime elevator ding, this episode.
It's a big elevator ding.
And upon the ding, he turns away and walks into the elevator. And then a beautiful blonde woman joins him and smiles, and his entire body and face swing toward her, glowing, and he'll be just fine.
Oh, it was the best. It was very much it fit very Joey Tribbiani. How you doing?
It was very hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
And what I love is that we don't actually get to see Corky's face in response to this. The elevator doors close, and then we cut to an over the shoulder of her to Miles as she's already turned back. So we never get to see how Corky actually feels about that. Because it's not about that. Miles tells Corky she has to let her camera crew know that Paris is back on. And she says she's so happy that she's finally going. All she has to worry about now are a few wedding details. And she swings to her trusty maid of honor, Murphy Brown, and says she's hoping she can help. And Murphy says, come on, Corky. I was fitted for the dress. I gave the shower. If there's much more to this wedding business, I want to be paid.
Again, Murphy Brown is a mood.
And honestly, I support that.
I support her so much.
And Corky says, there are only a few more decisions left to be made, like where to have it, what to eat, and who to invite. She knows Murphy will do a great job. She gives her a hug and thanks her. Cut to.
Also, I have to add, she says that none of this has been done and they have a week. What wedding venue is available? I mean, I guess they do get a tent, but like I literally went, what?
I was like, oh, wow.
Like they could have just used Phil's, as Phil says.
As we talk about later.
So we cut to the bullpen. Some time has passed, and we have Murphy's secretary, played by sitcom legend Carol Ann Susie.
Oh.
You know her voice. You've seen her career spans like 40 years. She's done theater, but I think most people know her from, or in some film, but most people know her from television. I think most people now will probably know her as the voice of Mrs. Wolowitz on Big Bang Theory. I did not watch that show, but I would know her from that.
Did. They do a really lovely recognition of her passing.
I did watch that. And I also read a lot about how fond of her they were and how sad of losing her. You know, she passed away in 2014 of cancer at 62. It was really, really quite lovely, the tributes that were paid to her. But even though she's in Death Becomes Her, she's in The Secret of My Success, she's in My Blue Heaven, but, you know, she's also been in Cheers and Becker and Married with Children and Night Court and just everything in the 80s and the 90s. Seinfeld, she's in a very famous episode of Seinfeld. And it was so great to see her because I think that she's that kind of face. I think we were getting used to a lot of the secretaries that we didn't really recognize.
Yeah, good old Judy the secretary. That voice.
Judy is in the middle of a divorce.
Judy is not having a good time.
I don't care. I can't do her. It was like, I don't care.
No one can do her.
I can't do it. I don't care if she's from Brooklyn, by the way, if anyone is shocked.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care if he's on his hands and knees. The car is mine. The house is mine. Murphy comes out. Judy, the skinny metal rod that turns on the sprinklers and doesn't even have a name, is mine. Judy. And furthermore, if he tries to get custody of the dog, I'll drag his butt across the coals. Make sure you actually use those words. Drag his butt. So Judy has some issues.
I wrote that this has to be straight out of her audition, if she had one.
Oh, yeah. Like, literally, it was just like, oh, yeah, you've got this part. Like, it's perfect.
She was hired
for
to do exactly that. Like, I have to imagine Burnett was like, great, can you just look this direction when you do it? Great, go. It is just like, this is what Carol Ann Susie does.
Comic legend. Murphy pretty much just needs her secretary Judy to know that the caterer calls, she doesn't care as long as it's meat. She's not saying anything to the sleazy tabloids, not even the color of the napkins.
Also, I feel like Judy's having a really rough time because she's going through a divorce and all this wedding shit's happening around.
Right?
Like, people are not considering Judy. I'm sorry, I will step back, but like, Judy.
No, seriously. And that's why it's kind of great that that's what the secretary is.
She's so bitter.
So Murphy has a basket of color swatches, which I believe are like kind of a pink and like a peach and like a purple, like kind of like a yellow. It's like Easter colors.
Oh, yeah, it's Easter.
All I kept thinking of, my colors are peach and bashful. Your colors are pink and pink.
I love that quote so much.
So Frank jokingly asks Murphy, what color are the napkins? And Murphy has had it. She doesn't know the color of the napkins because she's too busy dragging the Sherwoods to a rehearsal dinner at the Sizzler. And this is something interesting. It's a moment we don't usually get with Murphy, which is Frank is shocked that, that Murphy doesn't love this, that, don't all girls dream of planning a dream wedding.
Can confirm they don't.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I am married. I never imagined my wedding until I had to plan it. As a young gal, I imagined I was fighting with swords with my swarthy partner in the woods. I can confirm not all girls plan a wedding.
Yeah, and that's why I thought it was interesting that they juxtaposed this with Murphy as the type that you would think would not have planned a wedding with someone who did
really
when she was a kid. It's very, very sweet moment, actually.
It's very sweet to watch her just like melt into this memory. It's really sweet.
And that's also a testament of there are different people, like there are different women. Women are not a monolith. I mean,
let's perhaps not make an assumption.
Exactly. So Murphy talks about her dream wedding when she was a kid, which was in a big billowy tent, that's Corky's weddings in a tent. By the river with flowers and candles and a horse-drawn carriage and her future husband, Fabian. It's got this longing. It's hilarious, but also this sort of really sweet sort of longing about it. And I was trying to
romance novel?
Very romance novel-y. I was trying to think of an example to explain to people like who Fabian was. Like what would be a good modern example of that? Would it be like one of the Jonas Brothers or something?
Oh, I don't know about that.
I was also thinking for like our generation, it was probably like the kid from Home Improvement. Timothy Taylor something?
I'm sorry, Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Yeah, sorry. I was a little old for that.
I'm literally looking at him right now to like.
I mean, he definitely was like with the Elvis craze.
Well, he was a teen idol. Like he was,
a teen idol. He's Harrison Ford's age, if that gives people like sort of a sense.
Honestly, I do think Jonas Brothers is a pretty good.
Is that a good one? Okay.
Pretty good equivalent. And because I'm too old for Jonas Brothers, I was like, is it?
That's why I was what's the value?
I was gonna say like Bieber, Jonas Brothers.
Bieber, yeah.
It depending on your generation. Yeah. I think Jonathan Taylor Thomas, had he been a singer.
Yes, that's why I was thinking, yeah. But that was the thing that came to my head because I've seen a lot of millennial entertainment where like he's the name that comes up. So Frank thinks that Murphy should relax and enjoy the wedding stuff, which never happens. And then we cut to the wedding.
Y'all, this wedding. We enter and we are in a wedding tent. And it is, I would say, fluffy spring is the vibe. We have white lattice and then white table tent sides.
Mm-hmm.
It does feel very springy with everyone's attire. Doris, who we see in a second, is in a very kind of light teal, bright light teal.
Great color for her.
It's gorgeous and sparkly. But the first thing we get to see is coming through the lattice entrance are Audrey and Miles. And they are getting frisked, metal detected with wands.
Yeah.
It's for those who don't remember the metal detector wands at like security, who not sure anybody who currently listens to our podcast doesn't remember those, but they're standing in the position that we all now stand in for the body scanners at the airport. They're like wide stance in second position, arms are up over their heads and like making a diamond shape. Like they're either being held at gunpoint or they're in a body scanner.
Yes.
And it's those two and their faces. What a gift to all of us. And as they're standing there finishing up their scans, Audrey wants to thank Miles for asking her to be his date. And even though they've been out twice, and she turns into Carl from part 1 and says that people know that the person you picked to sit beside you to watch two people make a commitment to each other for all eternity must be pretty special.
Yes, and if not for Frasier, he would have married her.
Uh-huh. Also, this is one of those moments that I love Jane Leeve's accent so much.
Yeah.
I love her voice so much. The way she says "ool" is just, it's the perfect accent.
She's lovely.
And Miles says, yeah, along those lines, no one needs to know this is only their third date. Audrey, ever the co-conspirator, gives an, oh, okay, as he guides her into the room. And we all know from having seen Audrey twice at this point, that was the wrong thing to say to her. Or the right. depending on what you're going for. And they approach amidst that way that you kind of mingle when no one's sitting down yet, but you're standing in the aisles of the chair or in the rows of chairs.
Mm-hmm.
They approach Jim and Doris. I wrote, Doris's sparkly dress is a vision.
Oh, what a couple.
So they say they've been reminiscing about their own wedding day, and Doris says, yes, it was a lovely affair, but fraught with mishaps. And we will now reenact what they describe. Best man was late.
Jim lost the ring.
The gazebo collapsed.
We were robbed at gunpoint.
Bit of a rocky start, but we never looked back. If we had, we would have seen that runaway hearse coming. And what I love is the button of that, aside from that line, is Doris just looks into the distance with deep regret. She's haunted by whatever happened with that runaway hearse.
Their chemistry.
Oh, it's so they're again to like the actors. Obviously, they were directed very well, but these two actors just got it.
Yeah, from the get-go.
Oh.
And I feel like this is sort of kind of a thing that they never really finished off, per se, or maybe they just abandoned it, obviously, where they kind of finish each other's sentences about their past, because it's not the exact same thing, but it's very similar to when we meet them for the first time at Corky's place when they're talking about the history of 1961 as if they're both news anchors.
Yes. Oh, I love them.
But I would have loved if they continued doing that, but I think they kind of abandoned that, unfortunately.
Now, Audrey takes this moment to say, oh, Miles, soon they'll have some of their own if they could finally agree on the last few details. She shares that she wants a traditional wedding, but Miles wants the guests to dress as their favorite characters from literature, which I have to jump in and say that is part of the plot of the very first episode of Murder, She Wrote, The Murder of Sherlock Holmes. The man who was murdered is dressed as Sherlock Holmes because they all go to a party where everyone dresses as their favorite fictional characters. So I'm just saying, two of my favorite shows are always linked. She supposes it doesn't matter as long as they're happy, but she hopes he'll reconsider his idea to dress as Captain Ahab. He's such a dark figure. Thank you, Pookie. And then she jiggles his earlobe.
I was trying to figure out, is this the first time she calls him Pookie, or did she call him Pookie when they first met? I feel like this is the first time she calls him Pookie.
And then he validates it later.
Yeah. No, I think this is the start of the Pookie.
As Miles uncomfortably deals with his earlobe being jiggled, we pan to Phil and Phyllis, who have been standing in the background the whole time. They each take a canapé and a toothpick from the passing waiter. And Phil says, what the hell are these? He says he doesn't remember seeing anything like this before, and they'll never move them. And they start commiserating about how cocktail weenies and beer is what people really want. But did anyone ask them? And Phyllis huskily barks out, 50 years in the restaurant business and they pass us by. And I just love these two so much. Yeah. Again, a pair that just get it. They both simultaneously eat their bites of canapé, and Phil grumbles, oh yeah, now I'm full.
It's the cocktail hour, Phil. You're never full on one cocktail weenie. Get over it. He's so
pissed, and I love it. I love it. He says it out, looking at everyone, if only.
That's when I was like, oh, I've missed Phil. He hasn't been in that many episodes.
Oh, he's so good. I want Phyllis's voice so badly, but if I tried it, I would hurt myself. So in that moment, Murphy Brown arrives in her lilac shepherdess glory. It is fluffy. There are tears. There's a hat. There's a choker with a bow. There is definitely a hoop skirt under there, and there are lace gloves. It's the type of costume I'm always dreaming about getting on stage. The way Candace swings her hips to make that skirt swish as she lands is
brilliant
masterful.
Piece of comedy, the swishing of the skirt.
Her use of that hoop skirt the entire episode is that woman clearly played with that thing as long as possible. It was so fun.
So the funny thing about this is that I did not realize until I rewatched this episode that I did a production of The Last Night of Ballyhoo, and they put me in an outfit that looks like this. And
I was going to say, this reminds me of every production of 5 women wearing the same dress I've ever seen.
Right? Comic gold.
I love wearing a hoop skirt on stage. I love it so much. They're so fun. They're so different than anything else I wear, obviously. So I get a kick out of them. And I just wore one in a play that I did. And anytime I could swing it like a bell, a la Runaway Bride, I have such a good time.
Or pull it up to get through a door frame.
The secret to getting through a door frame
what is it?
Sitting down in a hoop skirt is you pick up halfway through the hoops, the rings of the hoop. Yeah. You pick it up on one side.
Brilliant.
And then you just sit down and lay it down, or you walk through the door. You're not supposed to pick up both. You pick up one side, it goes flat, off you go.
Well, now I know.
I'm telling you, everyone, for your hoop skirt endeavors, Just pick up one side. So she rounds on a vendor, the man she's been looking for.
Oh,
We find
yes.
out eventually that he's Mr. Cheater Florist. But funny enough, he's very familiar.
He is. It's one of the 2 writer cameos and past guest on the podcast, Mr. Stephen Peterman.
Mr. Babyface Stephen Peterman, as he lives and breathes. So Steve, Mr. Cheater Florist, has been working on something. He does look like a cater waiter, so it took me a second to realize that he's the florist because
He does
she has
look
to
like a cater
literally
waiter,
say it to
yeah.
me. But she said she just saw the centerpieces on the dinner tables. She ordered 50 white roses on the table, not 49, and he probably didn't think she'd count every single flower. Well, she did, Mr. Cheater Florist. I know he says something about his own performance, but his facial expressions are every
No, it's great.
vendor employee who's ever had to deal with a crazy bridal party. So I believe it, Steve.
I am scared of Murphy.
She then storms from there off through the party, running into everybody. This is a really obscure pull, but she's giving me Eileen Brennan as the Widow Hubbard in 1986's Babes in Toyland.
Whoa.
And it is, if you have seen that movie and seen her portrayal of this woman, that is exactly the masculine woman in a fluffy dress energy that
It's
Candace
the first
Bergen
time
is
you've
giving.
made a reference that I don't get.
This is also, let me tell you, it is accurate. That's all I'll say.
Oh, I should
And
also.
in-
Oh, sorry. No, I realized I
No,
should
go.
also mention that the second writer is Tom Seeley, who you see for like a second, and he's playing one of the groomsmen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom is a little less front and center.
Yes.
So as she's storming through, taking people out with her hoop skirt as she goes, she runs into Frank. And Frank says he assumes Murphy must be feeling good. Everything's under control. Oh, under control? Has Frank not noticed that the flower girl threw up on the ring bearer, that she had to bounce a waiter out of the kitchen who was putting a tape recorder in the brioche, and somebody thought they saw Rona Barrett parking cars? She then starts pointing to her skin, saying her nerves are right on the surface. And at that moment, we hear a horse neigh, and she just yells at Frank, asking if he fed the horses. It is chaos.
Absolute chaos.
And Frank tells her that if anyone should be a wreck, it's him. It's a miracle he fit her into the car. He doesn't think he can do it again. He may have to strap her to the roof. And at that moment, look who's here but Kathleen Sullivan. She enters, not frisked, she enters the tent. And he just says, look how gorgeous she is. Oh, it looks like she's alone. How could that be? Look how gorgeous she is. I love her.
I love the fact that he thinks that she's gorgeous because of the whole sidebar you did on the fact that she got such flack for the gray hair, and she's got gray hair. And I was
She's
just
stunning.
yeah, it's like the little tufts of gray hair, and it's like he's like, she is gorgeous. I will have
like,
her.
He literally has to say, look how gorgeous she is twice.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
how deeply in love with her he is. And he turns and says, Murphy, I have a favor to ask. And she says, how am I supposed to get home, Frank? And conveniently, right at that moment, Carl to the rescue.
Girl.
He says he'd be happy to drive her home. He has his camper. She thinks she'll be fine, but she doesn't think she should get that dress anywhere near a kerosene stove. And tells Frank to go for it. She'll figure it out. And he tells her if he didn't like her so much, he'd marry her. Murphy then, as Frank scuttles off to try and romance Kathleen Sullivan, TBD, we will let you know how that goes. She's making her way through the rest of the guests when she sees a photog trying to crawl in under the tent. And she starts stamping at him like he's a rodent, saying, get out of here, you garter snake, go. And starts stamping at him while he flees out back from underneath the tent.
I love how she lifts up that skirt and stamps him.
Oh, yeah. Again, the skirt acting. And then she turns around, lets out a ha, and does a hop of the hoop skirt and darts out of the reception area.
Ha! It's just moi.
It's the hop that sends the hoop up that's so good.
Now, the next scene is interesting because we are in the background, or the back room, I should say, some area where Corky's getting ready. And her mother, who, by the way, I forgot to mention last episode, because I forgot, is the grandmother on Full House. Also tons of things. I saw a picture and I was like, oh my God, that's right. Danny's mom. She's Danny's mom. And the other mother is Will's mother, but also is Candace Bergen's mother, Frances Bergen, in a very, it's not really a cameo, maybe a glorified cameo, but like playing a mother is hilarious. She's an actress in her own right. We talked about in a later episode that I was shocked to find out she's in American Gigolo because I had not seen it. And what's great is she has a funny little moment with her daughter where she gets to kind of threaten her, which is great.
It's great.
But you can tell that Corky is not in a good place. Everyone's sort of snapping at her because the mothers, as often is with early married couples, feel that they're not equally getting their time after the honeymoon.
I just want to say this for the record.
Yeah.
If either of you are listening, Mom, Angela, I love you both so much. Thank you for being the easiest mothers of any couple ever in the world.
Oh, that's so sweet, Jessie.
Literally, they were angels. We had to ask them to be more in the way because they were so kind and easy to work with. I love them so much. Anyway, back to our conversation.
They weren't this headache that Corky is getting.
Complete opposites.
Complete opposite. So Murphy kind of tries to usher them out, and I wrote that the two mothers take Corky's hand like she's a damn wishbone.
They're going to break her in half.
I know. And her mother wishes her the best of luck, and Will's mother pretty much says, if you turn my son into a drunkard, I'll kill you.
It's so good. It's so good.
It's so good.
That's one of my favorite lines of the entire episode. And this episode is gold.
And it's great delivery and with the Southern accent of like, I'm going to say this like it's just a very sweet thing, but don't you dare kill my son. And then when she leaves, she turns to Murphy and she goes, there are only 49 roses on my table. Blanche Dubois. And then Murphy goes, I got your extra rose right here, lady. Love a little wink. So Corky is very upset. It's also the first time I noticed watching this episode, maybe because it's such a great copy and I watched it a lot on reruns. But there's like a blue sort of like under tulle thing going on with the white. Like it's very cool.
I love it. It's not a pure white. When she said, I was like, is that green? Is it blue? I love it.
It's like it makes it sort of like shimmer where you go, oh, it's kind of blue.
I'm going to call it pearlescent.
Oh, I love it. And, Corky doesn't know she can do this. The press is here, the family is fighting. And then we hear this sound, and Murphy goes, helicopters. Just the way she says helicopters is so, like, there's 5 different meanings behind it. Like, I can't believe I didn't think of it. Those vultures, which she eventually says. Mm-hmm. And so Murphy goes out of the little room.
Murphy is literally at war.
Yes, waving the hat, get away, you vultures. You're not getting one lousy picture, which is like, well, now they are, Murphy, because they're going to have pictures of you being totally irate.
Like the best pictures in the world.
She's pulling an Alec Baldwin.
Yep.
She says she has a bazooka and she's not afraid to use it. And then Corky screams at Murphy, to stop it, to come back in. Corky is just really, really sort of worried, but Murphy's like, she put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this wedding, and she's going down the aisle if Murphy has to drag her. And then her 2 sisters come in the same outfit as Murphy, but in different colors, saying that there's a fight going on because their father called Will's father a cheap bastard. And then Corky thinks this is a big mistake. And then Murphy's face just sort of drops, and she puts her hand, like we've talked about, Murphy, when it comes down to it, always has Corky's back. And then we cut to...
We are back in the tent, in the wedding area. People are actually now seated. We have definitely got the impression that a lot of time has elapsed and people are looking a little restless. However, most importantly, Frank is sitting right behind Kathleen Sullivan.
Yes, he is.
They're both on aisle seats and he's sitting right behind her doing that really fun thing where someone kind of just like speaks over your shoulder the whole time as if they're next to you. And he says, Kathleen, how can you say it isn't going to work? You haven't even given it a chance. Kathleen says, Frank, when a man opens a conversation saying that he has a higher TBQ than Bart Simpson, it doesn't bode well. And I wrote, her voice is incredible.
It's really incredible.
Oh, she says that? I was just like, oh.
Like her voice alone makes her sexy.
Truly, I had to stop and go, wow, I get it. It was like when I went and saw Bruce Springsteen at the Apollo in 2011, 12, 13, somewhere around there. And I'd always, loved the music, knew family that loved him, friends who loved him, saw him in performance. Because it was that thing of being like, oh, like Rod Stewart is a sex symbol for this generation. And sure, Bruce Springsteen, sex symbol for this generation. It was like, but I could be his child. So whatever. Went and saw that and I was like, oh, I get it. Still a sex symbol. Like, with Kathleen Sullivan, I was like, oh my.
Jersey.
I had such a flutter in that voice. What a dame. And Frank says that he knows he pushes hard sometimes, but that's just because he's a sensitive guy. He pauses and says, I wept openly during Field of Dreams. And Kathleen does this wonderful, like, kudos for somebody who's not an actor performing.
Yeah, she's
she takes
really
this
good.
wonderful steadying breath and then turns back and says that she's going to count to 3 and then she's going to call security. He laughs and says that she's bluffing and then pauses and says, that red Corvette outside is mine. 1? Okay. And as he walks away down the aisle, he meets up with Carl, and Carl asks how it's going. And he says, she wants me. And Carl laughs in his face and says, yeah, right. And as Frank dejectedly continues down the aisle to his actual seat, we see Miles and Audrey sitting in their seats. And Audrey sits forward and turns to Miles, gazing at him. And this sweet Audrey, again, these wonderful moments where I'm like, you cartoon character, I love your deep heart so much. And she tells him that she's been working up the courage to tell him. She just wants to say, she says, quote, well, I'm not really sure why you asked me here today. She says she doesn't really think of herself as anyone special. She says, but you're very special. So smart and so handsome. I've never met anyone like you. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I know I'll never be very important in your life, and I can accept that, but I wish it were different. Also, Jane leaves, like, I said it way faster than she did. She does it in such a, like, beautifully kind of thoughtful, slower pace because she's just working her way through it's so lovely. And Miles is just staring into her eyes while she's saying this. And you could tell Grant's doing the wonderful thing of, like, he could either be moved or he could be unaffected. It's that perfect, like, sitcom acting of, like, I don't know which way this is going to go right now, but he's clearly not expecting what happened. And so as he considers, he reaches out and takes off her glasses. And instead of doing the 1990s, oh my God, without her glasses, she's beautiful, Jane leaves, does this squint.
Oh, yeah.
The second he takes them off, that just makes her look so bizarre.
The great is that
so
he
blind.
mirrors her and does the same thing when
Exactly.
she takes his glasses
So-
off, so they're squinting at each other.
Which is what I was about to describe.
Sorry,
So
okay.
she's immediately squinting like this, like, naked mole rat. And then as blindly she reaches up to take his off and he's squinting like a naked mole rat. And they gaze blurrily at each other through their eyelashes. And Miles does, and oh, Pookie. And they embrace in this, like, makeout that sends her, like, sideways back, so her elbows, and they're like folding over the back of the chair to have this passionate kiss.
And maybe
It's
remind
incredible.
people that they were dating at this point, the actors.
Yes.
And so they're
Yeah.
really making out. Like,
Oh,
there's not
yeah.
a stage kiss. They are really making out.
No, when you cut to the next shot,
Yes!
which is over them at Murphy standing at the podium or, like, at the stage, they're, like, straight up just making out.
Which is great because it fits the line where Murphy's like,
Yes.
Miles!
Miles. Because Murphy comes out and she's asking for attention multiple times and finally goes, Miles. And they both guiltily return their glasses to each other and sit forward to focus on what's happening. And they
Oh.
are rumpled.
But do they return their glasses to each other?
No.
They switch their glasses. Which is such an old trope, but it's so fantastic.
They return their glasses
Oh.
to each other.
There you go. Sorry about that. Yes.
No, it's perfect.
they're each wearing each other's glasses, and it's adorable.
It's so cute. I also I love I think that they're perfect for each other. And I think that they have the same prescription because I think they're the same kind of blind.
Yes, probably.
decided.
Yeah.
And Murphy, now that they've returned to normalcy, says that she is here to explain the delay. We're still hearing the helicopters, by the way. They're still
Yeah.
going overhead. And she says, but first, everyone looks so nice. Why don't you give yourself a hand? Come on. And we just cut to the audience who's just no bites. And she says, okay, getting to the point. She has a very difficult thing to tell them, but there isn't going to be any wedding. The bride and groom have been having some problems. They've already left for their respective homes to do some thinking. They appreciate everyone's understanding. And then she just sits there, have a nice day. And we just cut to the audience looking flummoxed.
This episode is really good at doing the sitcom fake out
Yes.
because they've established so well that they're both okay with it, which I like with Will being like, oh, I don't want that either, because then it's not supposedly like sad, like, oh, well, he was okay with it. She's not leaving him. She's not a bad person kind of a thing. Well, I think that you totally believe it.
Especially because it's the end of the season. So we're like, oh, so they're not marrying her.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so that's the season end is like, okay. But then we cut to.
Mostly everyone's gone, but the band is still there. Frank and Murphy are alone. Frank announces that Jim and Doris are outside waiting for the tow truck. The weddings, they do not do well at weddings, the two of them.
They don't.
Bad wedding, happy life. Murphy tells Frank they are doing the right thing, and Frank says that they should go, but Murphy says that she has one more thing to do. And she tells the band to start, and she says one of my favorite lines of the episode, which is, Will and Corky brought the heart. I thought I'd take care of the soul.
It's so sweet.
It's so sweet.
I love it. She's such a softie.
She's really a softie. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the beginning of Get Ready happens, and the damn Temptations come out.
What a finale.
What a damn finale. And it dawned on me watching this that CBS took great advantage of their contract with the Temptations because and we've talked about them before, but there used to be this thing in the 80s and 90s where the season would be about to happen and they have these sort of packages where all of the new cast members of the new shows and the old shows would like sing a song or do a thing. There was a whole viral thing where a 70s ABC version of this got very popular, which was amazing. It was like, look at all these people. And so they had the whole theme of the season was get ready for CBS. And we will put links to all these videos. It'll also be on the social media, so you should check it out. But it's get ready for CBS. So they use this to the hilt for next season. Just to give people a sense, we've talked about the Temptations a lot. They've also changed throughout the years. So we have, in this version of the Temptations, we have Melvin Franklin, Richard Street, Ron Tyson, Otis Williams, and Allie Woodson, who are uncredited. I guess everyone just knows that the Temptations.
Yeah. And
they sing this fantastic version of Here Comes the Bride, which I think I still have memorized.
Yeah.
It's very catchy.
It is.
And Murphy sways back and forth to the music with her hoop skirt.
Yep, ringing that thing like a bell.
And they come in, they sing Here Comes the Bride. And they sort of help Corky down the aisle. Then from the back, Will comes in. It's so well choreographed and cut together. And then Will comes in his sort of white jacket and black pants. I guess that was sort of a Southern thing they're going for. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. And then the priest comes in, and then they come up to the aisle, and they're going to get married in private. Yay!
They look so happy.
What's also great is that Frank has to yell, "The Temptations!" just in case someone didn't know.
Just in case.
I mean, that's how it works. Also, forgot to mention last season that the actor playing Will has married other famous people, including on his soap opera, which I mentioned. He married Meg Ryan's character. And I had totally forgotten, he married Joe at the end of Facts of Life.
Oh, yeah.
He's the marriage guy.
He is marriage guy.
He's marriage guy.
Some people are I die in everything guy. Some people are marriage guy.
He's marriage guy. And so that's the end of season 2. And what a spectacular ending of season 2 with the damn Temptations.
And so hopeful.
I found an article that apparently in between takes, Diane English got to sing with the Temptations.
I would if it was my show. I'd be like, hi, this is part of your contract.
Yes, hello, I would
I'm sure they were actually also just very nice.
She said, they handed us the microphone and we started to sing a version of Here Comes the Bride. It was really awful, but it was fun.
That's called karaoke, and we love it.
We do. Childhood dream. I also found a quote from around this time where Tom Fontana, who we've mentioned is who Frank Fontana is named after, also a tremendous television creator in his own right, Homicide: Life on the Street. They went to college together, and he described Diane English as a cross between Dorothy Parker and Mother Teresa.
Yeah, that tracks. Yeah, I'll take it.
Any last thoughts about the finale of season 2?
I am so fascinated by all the things that are set up that either happen later or crash. Like, it is so, especially relationships.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how many things that I think of as kind of hallmarks of these like early and mid seasons are all part of this
Yeah.
this little two-parter. It's really, really fascinating. It's such an excellent end of season because it launches a bunch of things. It solidifies some. It's just such good writing. Like this episode is. These last 2 episodes are just such good watching.
Yeah. It does for Corky what I feel like the end of season 1 did for Miles.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So we didn't have time to really talk about Janet Carroll, who plays Doris, when she first appeared because we had a fantastic guest. But wanted to take a time to sort of talk a little bit about Janet. She is definitely a fan favorite, I would say, as well as a favorite of ours.
Oh, yeah.
So Janet is actually from Chicago, and she's a trained theater actress. She's also a trained singer. She put out a lot of jazz albums. She was on Broadway in Little Women with Sutton Foster. She had a very wide-ranging career, but I think a lot of people, just like with Carol Ann Susie, will know her as this sort of television veteran, right? She was, I think, other than Murphy Brown, more people would know her as the boss on Married with Children. I think also, which a lot of people are surprised about, as I mentioned, she's the mother in Risky Business.
I think that's the other big thing I know her from.
Yeah, same. But she did a lot of theater in Kansas City throughout the 1960s.
And Chicago.
In Chicago, yes. She was a first soprano with the Canterbury Choir Society in Carnegie Hall. And something that I had forgotten about until Charles had recently passed away was that she and Charles played husband and wife again on Ally McBeal.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
I wonder if Charlie recommended her because he knew that they had great chemistry, or it was, someone, the casting director or the people behind Ally McBeal really loved Murphy Brown. But it's really loved to sort of see them in sort of this dramedy together. Something also that I found was interesting was that Carroll, Carroll, is not her original surname, but her middle name, Carol. But unfortunately, Janet did pass away in 2012 of cancer. She was 71. And she always definitely played characters with a lot of status, I would say, right? Like people who were like bosses had a lot of gravitas. But I really feel like the best thing that we ever saw her in was this. Oh, she was also on Melrose Place. I think people would probably know her from that. She played Kimberly's mother.
I think one of my favorite things about Janet Carroll is you mentioned her as a soprano. She had a 3.5 octave vocal range.
Wow.
And you don't expect that when you hear her speaking voice.
Yeah, because she sounds like, I would assume, an alto.
Yeah. And so like that's such a great thing about like speaking voice has nothing to do with what you can actually sing when you're using your correct registers. And so the idea that this woman that we know is this kind of alto, snarky, casual, relaxed voice can actually sing up to first soprano and was operatically trained is just so cool to me. Her voice is incredible.
Yeah, no, she's pretty great. And our favorite Doris. No offense to any other Dorises.
Mm-hmm. But she is Doris.
Yes, she will always be Doris. And we'll see you next time
For another edition of FYI,
the Murphy Brown Podcast.